Welcome back, everyone, to the College Football 360 YouTube channel, and in today's video, I'll be unveiling my official SEC Power Rankings video here before the season gets started, and it's going to be a great video. It's going to be a long video, I just know it, and for that reason, I will be putting timestamps for every single team, so I don't really care if you guys skip around, although I would suggest you watch it all the way through, but they're going to be there nonetheless. It's going to be a very fun video, a very controversial video, and as a bonus to you guys, I have not only my first, but also my second team All-SEC guys in a chart at the end of the video, also timestamps for that as well. With that being said, let's just dive into it. Kicking things off here, working our way from 16 all the way down to 1, we start with the Arkansas Razorbacks of Fayetteville, Arkansas. They bring in a new head coach from Memphis, Ryan Silverfield. He went 50-25 in his 6 years at Memphis. Memphis was known for a great offense, a top 25 offense when he was there with them, and that's not really going to be the problem with Arkansas this year, as they had a top 25 offense last year. They were 23rd in scoring offense. But the big problem is going to be the defense for him, and we'll address that in just a minute. But looking at the top storylines, obviously, you got to go to Ryan Silverfield, the year one, like we just talked about, and the incredible turnover with this roster. They lost their leading running back in Mike Washington Jr., they lost their 3-year starter in QB Talon Green, and they lost almost everyone off of that defense except for Quincy Rhodes, and we'll get to him in a second. So this incredible turnover that Arkansas had is part of the reason, a big reason why I think that they're going to finish dead last in the conference. It's going to be a rough year one for Ryan Silverfield. It's going to be a long-term rebuild in Fayetteville. I think it's going to ultimately be a fruitful one, but nevertheless, it's going to be a long one. Key returning starters, Quincy Rhodes Jr. led the team in sacks last year with 8. Bradley Shaw was a steady force as a linebacker. And C.J. Brown, they needed someone to come back from that wide receiver room, and he was one of those guys. And honorable mention to tight end Jaden Platt, who had 300 yards receiving as well. Key and incoming players, they needed a wide receiver. Chris Marshall brings that experience there. They needed a right tackle. They got Bryant Williams. He's going to be a key hinge player. If he plays poorly, the offense will struggle. If he plays up to his potential, I think that he will anchor a good offensive line. And then Kamori House has all the makings of an NFL DB coming in from North Carolina. I think that was a really good pickup. Now, looking at the roster grades and schedule breakdown here, looking at the roster grades first at quarterback, I just don't see it with KJ Jackson. I really don't. That's why I have it as a C. He just looks like a lesser version of Talon Green in my scouting and evaluation about him. Going to the running back room, very depleted from last year, although I do see Braylon Russell as a bright spot there returning for them. Receiver room doesn't look too bad, but it lacks high-end talent. Excuse me. Offensive line, got 2 returning starters, plus I do like Bryant Williams at right tackle, but we'll see about that. Just a mid-tier offensive line. Defensive line really propped up by Quincy Rhodes. Look at the cornerback room. It's really held up there by Kamori House at nickelback because the safeties aren't very good. The secondary in general just isn't very good outside of Kamori House. Special teams, I think, will be good. And then coaching is a C, but that grade could get a lot better. I just don't believe in the staff quite yet at what they're trying to do with Arkansas. Looking at the schedule, games that they're favored in the maroon, games that are more of a toss-up in the gradient, and then games that they are not favored in, colored in the background is black. Looking at the schedule here, I see 2 games that they're going to be pretty much favored in North Alabama and Tulsa. I think everyone would agree with me on that. Find me the wins on this schedule, because this is a very tough schedule. You play at Utah in the non-con, you play Georgia in week 3, Texas A&M, Missouri at Auburn. That's a very tough environment, and then you finish off South Carolina at Texas and LSU. I could realistically see one out of Tennessee at Vanderbilt and South Carolina. I could realistically see one of those. But other than that, things look pretty bleak. Next up, we go to Mississippi State to visit the Bulldogs down there, and look at the storylines here. It's Taylor time. Kamario Taylor returns. He was the backup last year. He has incredible talent for just being a sophomore. He has all the physical traits. He's 6'4", 230, and he's a guy that can really elevate the play of the offense, whereas I do see that it's not as talented as every other team in the country. I mean, even Arkansas, I think, will have a better offense than Mississippi State, but with Kamaro Taylor, I think that it really can be elevated. The schedule as well, very tough schedule. We will get to that in just a minute. But first, the key returning players, obviously Kamaro Taylor, Anthony Evans III at wide receiver, and Fluff Bothwell at running back. Both those guys outside of Taylor were really good last year, starting players, contributing players. The key incoming players for them, Amari Williams at defensive end. I'm really excited about Braylon Womack. He was a four-star, consensus four-star in the previous class. He's a true freshman at free safety. He may not start right away, but he will play early and often. They will not redshirt him. That's for darn sure, at least to my knowledge at time of recording. And then DJ Chester at guard. They needed an interior offensive lineman. They struggled on the offensive line last year, and they needed to bring someone in to just help offset. Now, looking at the roster grades, I think that Kamaro Taylor at quarterback is a B- right now because we just haven't seen a whole lot of him after the season. This grade might be an A. I think he has the potential to be an A plus quarterback. Running back looks solid. Receiver room looks a bit depleted, but bringing back Anthony Evans might save that room. Offensive line, I think they're going to struggle. They bring back only one returning starter. They plug in holes with the transfer portal, and usually that's never a great sign, in my opinion. D line, it's C plus. It's very mid to me, below mid. Linebacker and corner and safety all look pretty good to my knowledge. I do like the fact that they bring back Zachary Tillman, although they did lose leading tackler Jerron Manning. They lost their leading defensive back in Braylon Lanier, but they bring back an all SEC caliber player in Kelly Jones. Same thing with the safety room. They bring back Isaac Smith, another guy that's an all SEC caliber of player. And then I think the coaching staff's really good here, and I think the special teams are excellent as well. They bring back their kicker. Looking at the schedule here, it's a very tough schedule. Like Mississippi State went 5-7 last year with a 4-game cupcake non-con schedule. And I think that they could get to the same 5-win mark or even 4 wins, and they will look a lot better just because of who they play. The 2 automatic wins, ULM and Tennessee Tech, they play at Minnesota, a very tough environment, a very tough team up north there. And then tell me where you see the wins. They have a murder's row starting in week 4, really week 3 at South Carolina. Then they play Missouri, Bama. They get that bye. LSU, Oklahoma, Texas. It just rolls right off the tongue. Those are all losses in my opinion, although I could see them upsetting one. They got close to upsetting Texas last year. I have that in the back of my mind. I just don't see them being favored at all in those games. And then once you get to the back end of the schedule, Vanderbilt, Auburn, if they survive that gauntlet, I could see them pulling out one of those. It's going to be a tough year, but I could see an upset in store. Next up here is Kentucky, and Kentucky, in my opinion, is in a rather more positive light after this hire of Will Stein. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, where they put up so many points over the past couple years, and he is just he's an A grade hire. Like, he's going to be a fantastic head coach at Kentucky, and he has already brought in a portal class that definitely makes them a higher talent overall than the past 2 teams that we've talked about. The transfer portal mayhem, like we talked about, we will get into that in a second. The brutal schedule, though, may hold them back. The key returning players from the previous regime, McQueese Humphrey Grace at defensive end. He returns. He was one of the leaders on that defense last year. Ty Bryant as well at safety. He's an all SEC caliber of player. And then Willie Rodriguez at tight end, one of the only returners on that offense, one of the only returning starters, really. And then key incoming players, I could have put like 10 different people on this list. Lance Hurd at offensive tackle, really. Colton Price as well, forgot to put him up there, but he's an all SEC type of caliber of player as well at center. Kenny Minchie, the quarterback, it was a lot of mayhem. First he was going to Nebraska, then he switched over to Kentucky. So Kenny Minchie, he finds himself at Kentucky after being the backup at Notre Dame last year, and he almost beat out CJ Carr in the preseason, which gives you all you need to know. Really, he's a mobile guy, but he's going to look downfield first. I think he is the exact type of quarterback that Will Stein needs. Really, he's the exact same type of scheme that he wants to run. Then CJ Baxter at running back, coming in from Texas, very good very good pickup there as well. We're not to that phase yet where we're hiring people yet to play college football, but we may get there soon. Who knows? Hopefully not. But looking at the key games, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Florida, as we switch over to the roster grades and the schedule. First, looking at the roster grades, quarterback is a B right now because Minchie is unproven and he does not have that SEC experience yet. But I project him to be a solid quarterback. Running back, very solid. Receiving room, very good as well. Nick Anderson comes in. DJ Miller looks really good. And Willie Rodriguez at tight end, who I already mentioned, really good as well. Offensive line should be one of the better ones, I want to say, but you bring in a guy like Tegra Teshabala from Ohio State. He very much struggled there, but he has loads of talent. Same with guys like Lance Hurd, Colston Price. Colston Price probably being the most consistent there. So that offensive line may take some bumps in the road, but I think ultimately you take that with the amount of talent that it has. Defensive line looks decently solid. Linebacker room solid as well. Bringing back Sam Green and Elijah Barnes coming in as well. You got the cornerback room bringing back Teheran Nichols, and the safety room obviously bringing back Ty Bryant elevates them a little bit more than the rest. And coaching staff, it's just a B right now, but it could get better. Looking at the schedule breakdown, Youngstown State and South Alabama, the only gimmies here for Kentucky, although I could see them winning more games. You know, they play South Carolina in week 5. That's probably the most toss-up game you're going to have on the schedule, maybe besides Vanderbilt. And that Florida and Louisville game, I know I have them in the gradient, but that's going to be a very, very tough game for the Wildcats. Well, both those really getting them at home definitely provides them with a chance, but I do think that the schedule, while it is tough, provides chances for them. Next up is the South Carolina Gamecocks. And look, Shane Beamer, he's under a ton of pressure. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows he's on a hot seat, really. And at South Carolina, he's the definition of mid. He is 33-30 over 5 years. If he does not make a bowl game this year, I think he's out. If he makes a bowl game, I think there's definitely a chance. You get to the 7-8 win mark, I think he's safe. Be that as it may, that's a topic for another video. You know, one of my favorite professors at college right now, he is a South Carolina fan, South Carolina alum, and when it comes to the Gamecocks, he always said one thing. He always said, when South Carolina has expectations, they always play down to it, and they always disappoint. But when they don't have any expectations and they're flying under the radar, they tend to overachieve. And I think that's exactly the pattern that has gone on over these past couple of years with South Carolina. And that's honestly what I figure to be this 2026 South Carolina team. I think they will make a bowl game, and I think that they will have a more consistent season this year if Shane Beamer can keep that ship steady. And the schedule does offer a chance. Yes, they play at Alabama. Yes, they get Georgia at home, and they have Texas A&M at home. And those are your 3 toughest games. And then it's a pretty big drop off. I mean, oh, well, they do play at Oklahoma. I did not read that at first. They do play at Oklahoma, but then you get Kentucky at home, you get Mississippi State at home, you travel to Arkansas, you get Tennessee at home. Very winnable games, and we will look at that in a minute. Key returning players, Lenore Sellers, Nick Harbor, Dylan Stewart, all first-team All-SEC caliber of players. Lenore Sellers maybe less so. He's an All-SEC caliber of player, but the previous 2 guys, yes, 100% all SEC type of players. Key incoming players, they needed to get this offensive line right. This offensive line was awful last year, and they got a borderline 5-star guy in Jacarius Peak at tackle, and Emmanuel Poku at guard is a very, very well-respected 4-star as well. Caleb Herring at defensive end is going to really help offset Dylan Stewart in the sense that he will not be double-teamed every single time, or if he is, it gives Caleb Herring a really good chance of getting to the quarterback. And then those key games, we will talk about those in 1 second. But first, the roster grades at quarterback. I have an A. Kind of a bold move here, saying that Lenore Sellers is an A quarterback, especially after the stats he put up last year. He was so inconsistent last year. He was not the most consistent quarterback last year, but I do think that he plays to his potential here. Excuse me. And then when you look at the wide receiver room, I really like it. You get Nick Harbor back. You get Brady Hunt back at tight end. Donovan Merv, that he looks really good as well. So I really do think that receiver room looks good. The offensive line looks really good in my opinion. They bring back Shedrick Surratt. They bring in Emmanuel Poku, who's a really well-respected player. They bring in Jacarius Peak, who is in my opinion, a first-team All-SEC type of guy, and the other guys as well. They needed to revamp the line. They did. It looks a lot better. Defensive line, A-. Dylan Stewart carries a lot of that. And then you look at the wide receiver and corner rooms. They look very solid as well. They bring back Fred J.R. Johnson, Justin Okoronkwo. At corner, they bring back Judge Collier, who's a really good player, really underrated player. And then at safety, they bring back Peyton Williams as well. And then the coaching, it could be better. I'll just say that. Looking at the schedule here, this is what I want to focus on. You got Kent State, Towson, and Mississippi State all in a row. You get all of them at home. Mississippi State might as well be a group of 6 team that they play here at this point, especially because they get them at home. I know I talked positive about them before, but they have a lot of negatives as well. So I do think that South Carolina probably comes out 3-0 versus them. You got a game at Alabama, super tough, but then you have 2 games that are very winnable. Kentucky at home in a first-year head coach rebuild there, and then you get out Florida. Playing at the Swamp, very tough, I know. But a lot of teams have won there very recently, and Florida has not been very good recently, and they're in year 1 of a head coach as well. Then you get the bye, then you play Tennessee at home after a bye. So realistically, if you're playing up to your potential, South Carolina, you're 6-1 heading into Norman, Oklahoma. It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it is possible. And then you get through a little bit of a mini gauntlet here with at Oklahoma and Texas A&M. I don't expect you guys to win those games, but if you're 6-1 at that point, who knows? And you get at Arkansas, the game's basically free at that point. I'm not a huge believer in Arkansas. And then you get Georgia and Clemson to finish out. So if South Carolina plays up to their potential, I could see an 8-win season. If they don't, Shane Beamer's going to get fired. Next up here is the Vanderbilt Commodores. When I think about Vanderbilt right now, I think about the quarterback battle that's happening right now between Jared Curtis and Blaise Berlowitz. Jared Curtis was the consensus 5-star, one of the best quarterbacks in the previous class. He comes in as a true freshman. What a get, first of all, for a 5-star to come to Vanderbilt of all teams. Be that as it may, he's battling against Blaise Berlowitz, who it plays a similar style, kind of a dual threat, big arm type of guy. So I really I anticipate to see who starts for them. I think it'll be Jared Curtis. That's what I think, but who knows? They may tend for a more veteran option. And the second storyline here is they're replacing a lot of stars. A lot of stars. You look at the tight end from last year. You look at the quarterback from last year. Both of those guys were the reason that both of them are pretty big reasons why Vanderbilt went and had a double-digit win season this past year. Although they do return some key players like Cedric Alexander, like Junior Sherrill, and like Brian Longwell, in addition to Martell Height and CJ Hurd as well. Key incoming players, obviously, you got to think about Jared Curtis here. I mean, Vanderbilt bringing in a 5-star at any position, much less quarterback, that's amazing. Brian Allen Jr. at the defensive end spot and Ricardo Jones at the safety spot as well. They were key players for me. And then going to the roster grades here before we get into the key games and schedule breakdown. At quarterback, I have it as a B because it is a strong room, very high ceiling. I'm not sure how it will actually play, though. It may play more toward a C level because, there's a lot of intangibles there that can go wrong and a lot of intangibles that can go right with this room. It's really kind of unpredictable. At running back, I have it as an A-. Cedric Alexander is one of the better running backs in the SEC. Offensive line could be a bit of a concern for me. They only return 1 starter, and it just looks pretty mid when compared to the rest of the SEC. The receiver room looks good, bringing back Junior Sherrill and bringing back last year's backup tight end Cole Spence. Look at the defensive line. Pretty good. They bring back Glenn Seabrooks, Miles Capers as well, but they bring in Brian Allen as well. But it lacks that top end talent, in my opinion. Like so many places, like so many positions with Vanderbilt. But be that as it may, linebacker, they bring back Brian Longwell, like I said before. Cornerback, they bring back Martell Height. I think he's a all SEC caliber of player. And then at safety, they bring back CJ Hurd and they bring in Ricardo Jones. I really like that safety room. That's one of the top safety rooms in the SEC. Very quietly good room there. And then the coaching staff is just amazing for what they've done to bring Vanderbilt back. You look at the schedule breakdown now. I think that they have 3 guaranteed. I say guaranteed. I think that they will be strongly favored in 3 games this season. That's Austin Peay, Delaware, and Week 7 when they play Arkansas at home. Now, the swing games for me, you got to go Week 4 at Auburn. Could have gone to NC State here, but going to Jordan Hare and that game being an SEC game, I think beats out playing NC State at home, although I could see Vanderbilt losing or winning both of those games early, and those 2 games early will really determine how the season is going to go. You get 2 juggernauts in weeks 5 and 6. That will be very tough. Then you play Arkansas, a game I think that they should be heavily favored in. And then you play at Kentucky, year 1 head coach there. Definitely an inferior roster, but you're playing at Kentucky. Excuse me. Then you get that bye. Off the bye, you play at Mississippi State. Tough place to play, but an inferior opponent nonetheless. And then Bama, going to be a very hard game, but you get that game at home, and then you play at Florida and Tennessee to finish out. So this schedule does offer a lot of opportunity for Vanderbilt. It's not the worst schedule in the world. Next up here, a little bit of a shocker to some of you guys. I have the Tennessee Volunteers here at number 11, a bit low. I understand that, but I have my reasons. The storylines, again, another quarterback battle. They retained George McIntyre, excuse me. He was a very high prospect in his own right a couple years back, couple cycles back. They bring in Faison Brandon as a 5-star consensus guy, kind of the same deal as Jared Curtis, like we were just talking about with Vanderbilt, but again, this quarterback battle, a little bit of a higher quality battle, in my opinion, compared to Vanderbilt, but the same principles apply. If they start the true freshman, you better be ready for the bumps in the road because they're going to happen in the SEC. But if you start the returner, maybe less bumps in the road, but maybe not as high of a ceiling, etc. I do believe in both guys given time, but they're both still super young. I mean, George McIntyre is only a redshirt freshman out here. But we'll see. We'll see. They do have very strong trenches. They have extremely strong trenches. They bring in David Sanders. I didn't even put him on the key incoming players, but he's one of the key incoming players. 5-star, probably. I think it was the number one overall player in the previous class at left tackle. They retain all their interior guys as well, and they reloaded on the defensive line. Although I do see a little bit of concern there, but guys like Xavier Gilliam give me a little bit more optimism about it. And this has to be the breakout season for Tennessee, in my opinion. Like, if this is not the breakout season, when is it going to happen with Josh Heupel? They've been so close to breaking out, or, they have broken out, but it just hasn't been, a college football playoff appearance, a New Year's Six appearance, etc. Josh Heupel needs to get this Tennessee team off of the mid tier and into the top tier, the elite. They need to be where Texas A&M was last year. They need to make that jump, in my opinion, for me to be really impressed with their season. And I'm not sure if I see that. Looking at the key in returning players, Dejon Bishop at at running back. Mike Matthews, there's our wide receiver, and Arian Carter, the linebacker. Although he's going to be suspended for 2 games, apparently. I don't know. I don't really care about those two games, to be perfectly honest. It's going to be Furman at Georgia Tech. Key incoming players, Faison Brandon, the quarterback. We talked about him. Xavier Gilliam, also talked about him. And Amari Campbell, sneaky good pickup out of Penn State, that linebacker there. Looking at the roster grades and schedule breakdown, first the rosters, the quarterback, have it as a B. I think that it's kind of in the same position that Vanderbilt was in. They could play up to their potential, but they also could severely underperform too. We'll see. It's a thing with these young guys starting and these young guys playing. It happens to where they don't pan out like you want them to, especially them playing super young, but they also could play to their ceiling a lot faster. Running back, I have it as an A minus, minus Deshaun Bishop. Very well accustomed back to the SEC, and especially very well used in Tennessee's offense. Receiver room looks pretty solid. They bring back Mike Matthews, who is the star in their room. Braylon Stanley as well returns. You look at the offensive line, like I said before, they bring back all 3 of their interior guys, and they bring in the number 1 overall player in last year's class in David Sanders Jr. I think that offensive line looks pretty good. Defensive line, it's very solid. They bring in Xavier Gilliam, but they do have a lot of players playing on that defensive line who did not start very much last year as well, so that's why that grade is not higher. Linebacker, I think it's an A. Aaron Carter's a stud. So is Amari Campbell as well, and Quay Moss at the star position as well. Very good players. And then cornerback room, this is probably the lower grade on this roster here. They don't have too much experience outside of Ty Redmond coming back. Safety looks good, in my opinion, though. Bringing back Edrin Farouk, and they bring in TJ Metcalf from Michigan. Yes. Coaching, see, I'm not a huge Josh Heupel fan, and I'm really not a Jim Knowles fan. Jim Knowles had one good year with 1,000 draft picks at Ohio State, and everyone crowned him the best defensive coordinator in college football. I personally think that he is one of the most overrated coordinators in college football. Look what he did at Penn State. He sucked there. His scheme was terrible at Penn State, and it was one of the reasons why they lost so many games. And you look at everywhere else he has been okay going into Ohio State, and Ohio State really propped him up. Look, I think that with the right players, he can be a decent coach, but I need to see it. Looking at the schedule now, you have a couple I'm pretty sure that you'll win 4 games in terms of, I think that you'll be heavily favored against Furman, Kennesaw, at Arkansas, and Kentucky as well, coming off that bye, especially with Kentucky. Then you have some games that you really could win. The only games that I see that you're really not going to be favored in are Texas at Texas A&M and LSU. So the ceiling here is incredibly high. I mean, I see the ceiling as 9, possibly 10 wins. The floor at around 7. That game against Alabama at home is going to be huge, and I do think that that is a winnable game. They have won that game before in the past, especially at home. The Auburn game is going to be a huge test as well, coming off of that Texas game, and do not sleep on South Carolina. I do think that this team reaches bowl eligibility. I think 8 or 9 wins is in play. Next up's Auburn, and I think that Auburn is going to have a positive year this year. I cannot stress this enough. I really liked the hire of Alex Golish from USF. I thought that was one of the top hires from this past cycle where so many coaches were hired. I thought this was one of the best ones. I really liked how he brought 13 of his players with him, including players like Byron Brown, Keyshawn Singleton, Chaz Nimrod, etc. They really bolstered an Auburn Tiger roster that was pretty depleted and just had a lot of players from the old regime as well. So really a good refresh. But the key returning players, in my opinion, Jeremiah Cobb at running back, stud Xavier Atkins at linebacker, one of the only guys that will come back for that team. Well, on that defensive side, and along with him would be Caleb Harris as well. Going back to the third storyline, I forgot to talk about that. The trench play is going to be a bit rough, in my opinion. They do not bring back any starters from the offensive line or defensive line, so that could be an issue. Although Alex Golish did bring in several of his key players on both of those sides and brought his positional coaches with him from USF, who did such a good job with their trenches as well. So very conflicting things there. We'll see if it pans out. Okay, going to the key incoming players, Byron Brown, Deshaun Womack at defensive end. He is going to be one of those guys that really helps to stabilize that defensive line, a defensive line that brought in a ton of transfers. And then Cole Best, that center, they really do need him to play well because he may be the weak link there, but we'll see. Going to the roster grades and the schedule breakdown. Looking at the quarterback, I think it's a B+. I think Byron Brown is a great quarterback for the system, and he reunites with his wide receivers and his head coach. Running back, very solid as well. Receiver room would have gone higher here, but you don't have that like star power like they had last year with Cam Coleman. If they would have had Cam Coleman in this room, it would have been an A instantly, but there's just not much star power, but there's very much a consistency to this room with guys like Keyshawn Singleton, Chaz Nimrod, and Jeremiah Coger as well. Offensive line, B-. I mean, I could have gone lower here, but I decided to err on more of a safe side with that grade. And defensive line, I did not err on a safe side. I'm projecting that this defensive line is going to do well. I think that Deshaun Womack and Dallas Walker IV are excellent guys, and Jared Smith off the other edge is going to do well, in my opinion. Look at the linebacker room. I think it's very solid. You got Xavier Atkins in there. And looking at the cornerback room, they bring back nickelback Sylvester Smith-Reed. Rayshawn Pleasant should be a really good impact player for them as well, but I can't really go higher than that because they don't have any returners on the outside, which I value so much. At safety, really like that they brought back Caleb Harris from the old regime. I think that that room is really good and set with him. Special teams, they bring back one of the best kickers in the SEC in Alex McPherson, and a really good punter in Hudson Knack as well. Coaching staff, I wanted to go higher, but with the first year coaching staff, I can only go a B. Now looking at the schedule, I think that Baylor game week 1 is going to be very telling. They lost that game last year, and I do think that it's a very winnable game this year. Baylor is kind of on its last legs as a regime with Dave Aranda. I think that game is very winnable. I think that the schedule offers a lot of opportunities, especially in weeks 3 through 5. You get Florida and Vanderbilt at home. If you cannot win at least one of those games, then you're not going to do much with your season. But if you can win at least one of those games, ideally both of those games, then you're set for the season, in my opinion, assuming you beat Baylor. If you lose to Baylor, then that's another conversation. And then if you beat both those teams, or you beat one of them and you look impressive doing so, that Tennessee game looks a little bit more manageable. Then you get the bye, then you play a mini gauntlet there with Georgia, at Georgia, LSU, and at Ole Miss. And then you get 3 teams who you really should beat. You get Arkansas at home, at Mississippi State, and Samford before you play at Alabama. And that game has been close these past couple of years. So if they end up on the right side of things, they could have like 8 wins going into that Bama game. Next up here is, in my opinion, the most interesting team in the SEC. Coming in at number 9 is the Florida Gators. The storylines, there's plenty of them, but here's the ones that I surmise here. John Summerall, year 1. enough said. Really, like the Billy Napier era was very confusing and had its ups and plenty of its downs. I mean, it had plenty of downs, but a lot of ups in recruiting and whatnot. Another guy from the Sun Belt. I'm not quite sure about this hire yet. I really want to see year one with John Sumrall. Is it going to be a repeat of Billy Napier? Because Billy Napier was kind of saying the same things that John Sumrall is saying right now when Billy Napier was first hired at Florida. So will John Sumrall just be Billy Napier 2.0, or will he be the coach that he claims to be, a guy that's really going to emphasize toughness, tackling, etc., like that? And then they retained a ton of talent. Like, you look at how many starters returned from this previous regime when this should have been a total makeover by anyone's standards. It's definitely a feat that, is very impressive. And then they have a very tough schedule as well, and we'll get to that. Key returning players, some of those key returning players there, Jaden Bott, running back, they paid him a lot to come back, so he better produce for them like he did in the past year. Vernell Brown at wide receiver really could have put Dallas Wilson here as well. And then Miles Graham, the linebacker, they needed him to come back, in my opinion. Then the key incoming players, Eric Singleton Jr. at wide receiver, DJ Coleman at safety, and Aaron Philo at quarterback, who figures to start for them. And then you look at the roster grades and the schedule breakdown. We will circle back to those key games in a second. But a quarterback, I have it as a C plus. I think that Aaron Philo is probably one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the SEC. He may be consistent for them though, which would be something after they went through a ton of inconsistency with their previous quarterbacks, guys like Anthony Richardson, DJ Lagway, etc. Running back room, I think it's an A. I think it's one of the better running backs in the SEC. It's like 2A, 2B with Nate Frazier. But be that as it may, one of the best running backs in the SEC, if not the country. At the receiver room, it's an A plus. I mean, you bring back Vernell Brown and you bring back Dallas Wilson, and you add Eric Singleton. Sign me up. Sign me up. You look at the offensive line. I think it's on the weaker side. They do bring back left guard and right tackle, but their offensive line play has been so awful these past couple of years. I think it's going to take more than 1 year to really fix the identity of that offensive line, but we'll see. Defensive line, I think it's a B. They don't bring back anyone from there, but guys like Cam James and Jaden Woods figure to be good impact players for them. At linebacker, I have it as an A. They bring back Miles Graham and Jaden Robinson, along with bringing in Aaron Childs as well to that starting rotation as well. I think that linebacker room is very solid. At corner, I have it as a B plus with Cormani McClain and Dijon Johnson. And then at strong safety, they bring back Bryce Thornton, who they got in the portal a couple years back from Baylor, and then they bring in DJ Coleman at free safety. And the special teams, I think, is an A as well. Coaching, B is kind of the grade I've given to every first-year head coach. The one thing I have with this roster is that they bring back a lot of guys who did not play well. Like Cormani McClain, I hate to dig on him per se, because it was a lot of guys from last year just did not play up to expectation. And it's like, why are these guys even starting? You were asking yourself as a Gator fan some points at some points last year. So yes, they do bring back a lot, and there is offseason progression and whatnot, but will they be more effective? I think that's the big question. Now, looking at the schedule here, you have 4 games which I think that they will be heavily favored in. FAU and Campbell to start, and then Vanderbilt and at Florida State at the end of the year. Other than that, the schedule is very tough. They play a lot of the top teams. They play Oklahoma at home. And, well, I will say, they get all the top teams at home this year, which makes this schedule much more manageable than last year's schedule. So they get Ole Miss at home. They get Texas at home. Georgia's a neutral site game. Essentially, it's a neutral site game, so it's not an away game. And then you get Oklahoma at home as well. So that offers some advantages. I think that they may be able to knock out one of those guys, but certainly they're losing at least 3 of them, in my opinion. That Auburn game at Auburn, at Jordan Hare in week 3, that is a huge game as well. Such is the game at Missouri in week 5. South Carolina, I project to be pretty good this year as well, even though they were a little bit lower on my power rankings in this video. And then that Kentucky game, they've lost at Kentucky, I think 3 out of the last 4 times that they've went there. So they better go in there and win this year, because Florida blows them out of the water talent-wise. So I do see this Florida team getting to a bowl game. Anything higher than that, I'm not certain anything past 8 wins, but we'll see. Next up is the Missouri Tigers here. And the storylines, it's been a chaotic offseason for Missouri. They had a lot of coming and going. And the main thing around it was, the unfortunate thing that happened to Ahmad Hardy where he got hurt outside of football. Don't want to say it really on air, but you can, a Google search will really help you out there. It seems like he'll be ready for the season, but there's a lot of ambiguity around that as well, which is why, honestly, they're not higher. And then the Eli Drinkwitz consistency. I want to shout this out for a minute because Missouri, before Eli Drinkwitz, was not a great program. Yes, they had their years. Yes, Missouri fans, you had your years. But overall, historically as a program, Missouri is not one of those blue bloods. Like, oh, look, it's Missouri. Missouri. Oh, yeah, no, they're coming back out from, the 80s and the 90s where they were so good. No, they really weren't. Eli Drinkwitz has brought consistent winning to this program, which it has not had in a minute. Let's admit it, Missouri fans. You have not had that in a minute, and you got to applaud Eli Drinkwitz for that. He's playing with not that much money compared to a lot of the other SEC teams. He doesn't have national championship contender money, but he's making a lot of smart decisions with it, and he's been constantly overachieving at Missouri ever since his time there. And now he's got the talent and the players to really make a push within the next couple of years, in my opinion. And the other storyline, just really taking a 360 here. You look at the defensive turnover. They did not bring back a single defensive starter from last year. Honestly, was it needed? Kind of. Kind of. I'll just put it at that. Key returning players, Ahmad Hardy, assuming he's healthy and ready to go. Caden Green as well at left tackle. He's an all SEC type of guy. And then Nicholas Rodriguez at linebacker. He was a backup last year. They just needed some returning player that knows the system. And then the key incoming players, Austin Simmons, one of the best portal acquisitions, most underrated portal acquisitions, I should say, in the entire over the entire nation, really. Austin Simmons was the starter at Ole Miss before he got hurt, and he was a damn good one as well. And I think that he's going to unlock something that Bew Pribula really could never. Jaleel Florence at corner, he was a very highly touted guy there, and Robert Woodyard Jr., another highly touted defensive player that they just needed. And then we'll circle back to the key games in just a minute, but looking at the roster grades, again, I'm a huge fan of this Austin Simmons acquisition. He is a lot better than Bew Pribula ever will be, in my opinion. No slander to Bew Pribula, but in those big games, he just did not exist, right? But Austin Simmons is a guy who I think can shine there. Running back, it's an A plus, assuming Ahmad Hardy can stay healthy, because he is the best running back in college football when he's fully healthy. The best, bar none. Look at the receiver room, pretty mid in my opinion. They bring in Caden Lee, and he'll play out of the slot. You look at a guy like Donovan Obadigwo, or I totally butchered that. I'm sorry, but he's got a big catch radius on him as well, 6'2", frame with good size as well. Look at the offensive line, very very good. They bring back two of their interior guys and Caden Green. Caden Green is an all SEC player. I think I have him first team, and we'll see that at the end of the video. The guys that did not start last year are going to be really impact offensive linemen as well. They have a really good system there. Defensive line on the lower end, in my opinion, but I'll just say there's certainly room for improvement there. Linebacker room, I think is pretty good. They have Nicholas Rodriguez making a big push there, and they bring in Robert Woodyard, who is a good player as well at corner. They bring in Chris Graves and Jaleel Florence, and I think those guys are very solid as well. Safety room, again, there's a little bit more meat on the bone there that needs to be unlocked with them. And then at special teams, they do bring back their kicker Blake Craig as well. Coaching, it's an A plus, like I said before, with the drink consistency. Now, this schedule offers a ton for them, especially in the early point of the season. They play Arkansas, Pine Bluff, wherever they are. I mean, I know they're in the state of Arkansas. That's about all I could tell you. At Kansas, Kansas is not going to be very good this year. Troy, and then at Mississippi State. All games that they should win by double digits. Then you get Florida at home, who we just talked about. That'll be Missouri's first true test. Florida will have already played teams like Auburn, etc. But this is going to be the first true test for Missouri. Then they play Texas A&M at home. So if they beat Florida, going 5-0 into a home game against Texas A&M, I think that offers a lot to be desired, as I don't think that Texas A&M is going to be as good as they were last year. You get at Oklahoma, at Ole Miss in week 7, then you get the bye, then you go at Arkansas, game that you really should win. Then you play Texas and at Georgia. I'm not expecting you guys to win those games, but if you do, good on you. And then the Kentucky game at home, and then you get Oklahoma at home as well. I think you upset either one of Ole Miss or Oklahoma. I don't really think you can upset Texas or Georgia, but I think you get one of those upsets, even though you will not be you will not be favored at all in those games, and you take one out of Florida and Texas A&M, and you're looking at an 8-9 win team. Next up, here's the real surprise of the videos. I have the Alabama Crimson Tide here at number 7, ahead of teams like Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, etc. You can connect the dots there. Alabama, look, this when you look at the storylines, pressure is mounting for this team. This team is under severe pressure to get to double-digit wins, to get to the college football playoff, etc. Otherwise, I don't think Kalen DeBoer is ever really going to get canned because he'll win 9 games. But I mean, the pressure will mount and the fan base will riot if they don't make the college football playoff this year for the second. Well, they made it last year, but they didn't look very good in it, obviously, in their game against Indiana. But going to the playoffs 1 out of his first 3 years at Alabama would be very costly. And I mean, you already look at their recruiting stronghold that they had has already been broken. It's a turbulent offseason. They had starters go and transfer out. Now, not saying that those starters were stars per se, but still, when you have guys who start with starting experience on your roster, you retain those guys if you're Alabama. But especially on that defensive side of the ball, you didn't retain all of them. And, wide receivers like Isaiah Horton, who we'll talk about with Texas A&M in a second. You didn't retain him. You didn't retain key guys. And you're not getting a whole lot back. Alabama's transfer portal was very meh, in my opinion. Now you look at the quarterback battle as well. So going to the roster, you look at Austin Mack versus Keelan Russell. I hope that for Alabama's sake, they should start Keelan Russell and just deal with the bumps in the road. Because Austin Mack has not looked good when he has got into games. Obviously, when he's gotten into games against trash teams, that doesn't matter. But when he got into the game against Indiana, he did not look good. He did not look prepared. Now, has that happened to star quarterbacks in their first couple games? Of course. I mean, Arch Manning looked horrendous as well, and he finished his season pretty good as well, and he looks to have an amazing season as well. But I think that Keelan Russell gives you the best chance to win in the big games. That is my take on that. Key returning players, Xavier Brown, he's a top 5-ish, top 10 NFL draft pick, in my opinion. Not round, just overall. So I think he's the definition of a shutdown corner, all SEC, all American type of corner. Yohanze Pierre at linebacker, they bring him back. He definitely struggled last year, but he looks to really fulfill his potential because the sky's the limit with that guy. And then Bray Hubbard at strong safety, he is just he is a really good player there. Really good player. Key incoming players, Devon Tompkins at defensive end, he's a huge guy. And then Terrence Green as well. They made this defensive line huge. Like, you look at the roster, Devin Thompson, 300 pounds. Terrence Green, 320 pounds. Kendrick Bigley Jones, over 300 pounds as well. I mean, studs. I mean, now I should have saved that for the roster grades portion, and then they bring in Javen James at tackle as well. So now let's go ahead and look at that roster grade. And I'll just start with the defensive line because I already started with it. They bring in a lot of size, and that's exactly what you needed. Now, going back to quarterback, the quarterback room itself is a very strong one. I just feel strongly in that Austin McAfee plays does not give them the best chance to win. Running back, it's a C plus. I was even generous with that. I should have really given them a C, C minus. Daniel Hill is not an SEC starting running back, in my opinion. He just wasn't that great, and the guys behind him aren't that great either, in my opinion. Very highly rated, but just my opinion. Looking at the receiver room, it's the guys outside of Ryan Coleman Williams that really impress me, because Ryan Coleman Williams is the most overrated player in all of football at this point and all of college football. And everyone's heard it. Everyone has said it. But still, it needed to be said. Latsier Brooks and Rico Scott look wonderful, in my opinion. Those guys are really good guys in terms of their play style. Linebacker, B+. I think that the linebacker room leaves a lot to be desired, but it still is very strong. The cornerback room, just Dijon Lee Jr. as well. Dijon Lee Jr. is a very capable corner in his own right alongside Xavier Brown. And then the safety room is very good as well. Strong special teams. They bring back Connor Talty. Coaching staff's an A. I could have gone lower here, but I do really like their staff. Schedule breakdown. The schedule is very easy for them. That's the thing. The schedule is very easy. So they have to make the college football playoff, in my opinion. Excuse me. They get East Carolina, at Kentucky, Florida State, South Carolina, and Mississippi State in their first 5 games. Those are all, they should all be wins. If they lose one of those games, just write it off. Because you lose one of those games, I really don't think that there's a case for you to make the college football playoff, because those are easy wins for you guys, especially getting your toughest one in South Carolina at home. And that's not really a tough game. And then you play Georgia in week 6. I think that you're not going to be favored in that game, even if you are 5-0, because Georgia's that much better. Then you play at Tennessee, like I talked about with Tennessee. That's a trap game for Alabama, and Tennessee's won that game before in the recent memory. And then you play Texas A&M at home. I don't think Texas A&M is really that much better than you, only marginally, but I do see that game going down to the wire because Texas A&M usually likes to play up to the good teams. Then off that bye, you play at LSU. I think LSU is going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be very good. And then you finish up with at Vanderbilt, Chattanooga, and Auburn. So it's really not that bad of a schedule. So you get really 8 wins right off the bat. And if you can split between Georgia and LSU, and even split between Tennessee and A&M, you get to 10 wins. All right, now we go to Texas A&M, who I only think is marginally better than Alabama. I put them very, very close to each other. It was essentially a coin flip to see who would be above each other. I think that they're the same type of team with the same type of issues, in my opinion, except in my opinion, Texas A&M, they have to have Marcel Reed be more efficient. Marcel Reed looked like the best quarterback in football last year against teams like LSU, but he also looked like the worst quarterback in football multiple games throughout the year, especially looking at that Miami game. That was rough. And it's just, he's not a pure thrower of the football. He's got an incredible athleticism. I get that, but he's not a pure thrower of the football. He needs to improve that. He looked a lot like DJ Lagway in a couple games last season, but also he looks like prime Cam Newton out there sometimes. I mean, the range was just incredible, and if they can find some efficiency, some just stabling factor, I feel like Texas A&M could be a lot better. The trenches were completely turned over. They lost a lot on the defensive line to the NFL. Same with the offensive line. And I think that they're a strong contender. I don't think that they're a contender for the national championship. I think they're a strong contender in the SEC. That's my take. Key returning players, Marcel Reed, he's key because they need him to play well. Then Mario Craver at wide receiver, and then TJ Searcy at the defensive end spot because they needed some guy to return there, and he did, which was huge for them. Excuse me. Key incoming players: Isaiah Horton, the wide receiver from Alabama. He was elite for them, and I figure he'll be elite again for Texas A&M. A&M's wide receiver room is filthy. Then you bring in Ricky Gibbs in the third at corner. He's a shutdown corner, and then Tyree Adams. They need someone at left tackle to be good, and he's a blue chip type of guy. We will return to the key games in just a minute. The roster grades: at quarterback, it's a B. Marcel Reed could be higher, but again, I need to find some consistency with him. I've talked enough about him. Running back room, I like Ruben Owens, but I can't really go higher than B plus because it doesn't have like too much star power. The receiving room is just amazing in my opinion. They bring back Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel Roman, and they bring in Isaiah Horton. Sign me up. Sign me up. Offensive line, they bring back their center, and they bring in a lot of high quality guys to play around them. But again, with a lot of offensive line turnover, you figure they're going to struggle at some point. Defensive line is a B plus. I like who they got in Anto Saka, and I like that they retained TJ Seriously, but again, a lot of turnover. It's going to be a bit of a drop off from last year's, which was an A plus. Linebacker, it's a B plus. They bring back Damian Sanford, and I think that was a good retention right there. And then at corner, I really like Des Ricks. Des Ricks is a shutdown corner, aside another shutdown corner, which is Ricky Gibson. And then they bring back both their starting safeties in Dalton Brooks and Marcus Ratcliffe, and they were both elite most of the season, really all the season. Special teams, it's a B. They bring in a new kicker. They return their punter. Coaching staff is an A plus. I love Mike Elko. I love what he does. Losing Chris Klein will be a challenge for sure, but I think that they'll be able to pick up the pieces there. And then they're going to be favored in a lot of games this year. Weeks 1 through 3, weeks 5, 7, 10, and 11. If you guys can read, if you're just listening, that would be Missouri State, Arizona State, Kentucky, Arkansas, the Citadel, Tennessee, all at home, and then at South Carolina in week 10. and I think they'll be able to win that game. So the games, I don't think that they will outright be not favored in any game, but they have a lot of games that could go the either way, like at LSU in week 4, at Missouri in week 6, at Alabama in week 8. Before the bye as well, that game's very tough. And then they finish up weeks 12 and 13 at Oklahoma and versus Texas. So this season could go a lot of different ways, and honestly, the way I see it is that you got 5 games where you could very much could lose those games. They could lose any game on their schedule realistically, but those 5 games that I have highlighted in the gradient color, they very much could lose. And let's say they lose 3 of those games, they're 9-3. Let's say they lose 2 of those games, they look more positive on the 10-2 side. Now, coming into my top 5 here, I have Oklahoma. I'm a big Oklahoma fan this year. I think that they're very underrated, except to the quarterback position. I think that John Mateer is probably one of the most overrated. Him and the guy at Michigan, Bryce Underwood. Both those guys are the most overrated quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion. John Mateer, he played really well against kind of crap teams last year until the schedule got hard and he got injured, and then he played horribly. Everyone likes to bring up the fact that, oh, he was a Heisman candidate, through the first 5 weeks of the season. Guess who they played through the first 5 weeks of the season? They played Illinois State. They played Temple. They played a crap Auburn team that they barely beat. They played Kent State, and they played a crap Michigan team at home and almost lost to them as well. So, yeah, John Mateer did really well in those games. Yeah, anyone would with, a half a star. Well, I shouldn't say that really, but anyone worth half a darn that is starting in the SEC should do well against those opponents last year. And then the Texas game came, and he sucked, and he, was playing through some injuries, and he was injured this, that, and the third. I get that, but then, you look at the Ole Miss game, he did not perform very well. He obviously did not perform very well in this college football playoff game. The Missouri game as well was a struggle for him as well. He just struggled in general through the latter half of the year. And, when they can shut down his running ability and they get him to just pass, it's very dicey in my opinion. And they have a early brutal schedule. I mean, within the first 5 weeks, they play at Michigan, at Georgia, and Texas. I mean, that is a brutal schedule, and we'll get to it. Key returning players, John Mateer. I'm not leaving out the option that he couldn't get better. Like, I think that John Mateer could get better. There's loads of room for improvement with him, and he has the sky's the limit with his ceiling. But I need to see it. And then Isaiah Satania, one of the best all-purpose guys in the conference. Eli Bowen, a shutdown corner as well. Key incoming players, Trell Harris and Parker Livingston really help round out that wide receiver room very nicely. And then Cole Sullivan at linebacker, very good incoming player. And then we'll circle back to the key games. And again, 2 of those key games right there, smack dab in the middle. Look at the roster grades. The roster grades, quarterback's a B+. Like, I'm not going to lie. John Mateer is a very talented quarterback, and at times he played very well last year. Can we get more consistency, and can we not get him injured? Really, is really the key. But he's not one of the top guys in the conference, in my opinion. Let's get that out of the way. Outside of that, I love their roster. Running back, it's a B. It's pretty average, but outside of that, the wide receiver room, awesome. Isaiah Satania the third, Parker Livingston, and Trell Harris make up a fantastic room. Sign me up. Sign me up. And then the offensive line is very up and down, in my opinion. They bring back Michael Fasusi, who is an NFL stud, who will be an NFL stud. He's a college football star right now. They bring back their center as well. Defensive line, linebacker, and corner, all A's. And then special teams an A as well, and then safety an A-. Look, they bring back a ton on that defense, and they bring in guys who can really help step up in a big way, some blue chip guys through the portal that they got. Their coaching's an A. I love Brent Venables. I love Ben Arbuckle's offense. We just need to incorporate some running game, establish some presence of a run, and this offense will go far, and the defense, I think, is already set. You look at the schedule breakdown. You got weeks 1 and 3, and then 7 through 9, where I think it's almost all but guaranteed, but they just have a brutal schedule, man. They play at Michigan, at Georgia, Texas. And then weeks 10 through 13 are very interesting. They play at Florida and at Missouri to bookend, and then Ole Miss and Texas A&M in the middle. I think that they'll probably split that, and then probably go 2 and 3 versus the teams that they should. So I think that this is a team that, with the right way that the landscape plays out, a 9-3 Oklahoma team, I could certainly see getting into the college football playoff. Next up here is Ole Miss, and I am choosing to look favorably upon Ole Miss this year. They do have Lane Kiffin gone, and I think that their head coaching is a downgrade. Objectively, going from Kiffin to Golding is a bit of a downgrade, just overall as a program. Now, on the field, that's a bit of a different story. I think that, they were both pretty good at what they did. Not perfect, but they were pretty good at what they did. And one of the main reasons why I think that this Ole Miss team is going to have success this year, their stars are returning. Trinidad Chambliss, Keywan Lacey, the offensive line, guys like Will Eccles on the defensive line, Antonio Kite at corner, Sir Sunterrain Perkins, excuse me, I really try to get that name right. All their stars are back, and they are out for blood. This Ole Miss team played with a chip on its shoulder, and it was the best they played all season in the playoffs. They need that energy the entire way through this gauntlet of a schedule. Key returning players: Trinidad Chambliss, Keywan Lacey, Sunterrain Perkins. We know the drill there. Key incoming players, though: Luke Farrelly. Luke Farrelly is that Mike linebacker that they needed after they lost their Mike linebacker to LSU, who we'll talk about in a minute. Darren Hill Jr. at wide receiver. Their wide receiver room got totally revamped. They bring in Deuce Alexander, Darren Hill Jr. as well. Those guys are going to make up that wide receiver room, and they needed some guys as well right there. Jordan Renaud at defensive end as well, going to help bookend and really help support a strong defensive line. Looking at the roster grades, I would go on and on about Trinidad Chambliss and Keywan Lacey. I'm just going to tell you, I think that Trinidad Chambliss he's my Heisman winner. I think he's going to win the Heisman. He is a Heisman front runner. I think that he has that potential. Running back, Keywan Lacey. If Ahmad Hardy did not exist, Keywan Lacey would be running away with the best running back in the SEC award. Keywan Lacey, Ahmad Hardy does exist, so there's a bit of an argument, although I do think Keywan Lacey's right there with him. The receiving room, a little bit of some questions, but I do like it. I like Deuce Alexander. I like Darren Hill. They just need to pan out. Offensive line, really good. They bring back all of their interior guys, and they bring in Carius Kern from LSU at right tackle. I think that he'll be really good. Defensive line, they bring back Cam Franklin, bring back Will Eccles, guys who were game wreckers. Eccles had 11 and a half TFLs last year. Amazing. He had 5 sacks last year. Amazing. You look at the linebacker room, they bring back Sunterrain Perkins as well. He had a bit of a rough year because of the fact that he got injured, but he is a guy who immediately impacts your lineup. You look at you bring in Luke Farrelly as well. You look at the cornerback room. I think it's really good. They bring back Antonio Kite. They bring back Jalen Braxton as well. They bring in 2 safeties who did not start last year, so that's why I have it as a B. Special teams, they bring back Canero, the best kicker in the conference, and Oscar Bird, one of the best punters in the conference as well. You look at how the schedule breaks down. That Louisville game is going to be very interesting because Louisville is my number 2 team in the ACC behind Miami. So how is Ole Miss going to look against Louisville? That's a true early test for them. Then they get that week 3 game against LSU at home. Oh boy, that is game of the year right there. Game of the year is going to be that game right there. I'm sharpieing that in. That is written in pen. That game is going to be game of the year in college football. I just can't wait for that game. I just cannot wait for that game. And then I do think that game at Florida is going to be a trap game, but I think that they will be heavily favored in that game coming off the bye. I think they'll be favored against Vanderbilt, Missouri. That Texas game at Texas, that's the only game where I can be like, oh, Texas is probably going to win that game. Because I think that Ole Miss is just going to get outgunned by Texas. They won't get outgunned much this year, but I think that they will get outgunned there. Then you look at that Georgia game. You get that game at home. You won that game last year. That's why I think that game is up for grabs. And you go to Norman, Oklahoma. Very tough place to play. I understand that. If they can just split that Week 10 and 11 slate and then just kind of coast against Wofford and Mississippi State in that Egg Bowl, I think that they could certainly make the playoffs. All right, now we have the Lane Kiffin-led LSU Tigers, one of the villains of college football, certainly for the team we just talked about in Oxford. But you look at LSU, man, the storylines are all over the place. And then you look at Lane Kiffin. He comes in here, he brings some of his guys with him. Some of his guys don't come with them. It was definitely a surprise, and I followed it closely this whole offseason. This team has a ton of stars. If you thought that LSU did not have much NIL, you would be sorely mistaken after looking at the class that they put together. The number one overall transfer portal class. Lane Kiffin brought in every star from everywhere. Bringing in Sam Levitt from Arizona State. They bring in Jordan Seaton from Colorado. They bring in Prince Will Mamielin from the previous school. I'm not even going to say their name. Ole Miss. Just bring in players from everywhere, and the stars are abounding. And especially on the defensive side, they've retained some like Whit Weeks, like DJ Pickett, like PJ Woodland, like Tamarcus Cooley, guys that really we just highlighted there as the key returning players. You look at the key incoming players. I forgot to say TJ Daugherty, leading linebacker in the country, really, leading linebacker at Ole Miss. Now those key games will circle those later. Look at the roster grades. Quarterback's an A-. I don't think Sam Levitt's the best one in the conference, but it's pretty close. I think he gets overrated in some places, but I think he's underrated in other places. People seem to be either all in or all out on him, and I think he's just going to be a fine player for them as long as he stays injury-free. Running back is a B because they don't really have a bruiser. They have just a lot of kind of scat backs. At the receiver position, I think it's an A. They bring in Jace Brown, Jackson Harris, and Wesley Watkins as well. And Trey'Dez Green is objectively one of the best tight ends in college football. Right there, 1-2 with the guy Jamari Johnson from Oregon. Offensive line, B+, it's very solid. Obviously, they bring in Jordan Seaton. They bring back a couple guys. This offensive line was horrible last year, and they just need to revamp the whole thing. Even bringing back some of those starters from last year was a bit of a question mark. You look at the defensive line; I think it's B+. They bring in Prince Will Umamielin, one of the more overrated edges in my opinion, but he's still a game wrecker when he's out there. And then you look at the linebacker room; it's an A because they bring in they bring back Whit Weeks, they bring in TJ Daugherty, Deshaun Spears as well. That's the best linebacker room in the country, one of the best. You look at the cornerback room as well; it's an A+. They bring back PJ Woodland, they bring back DJ Pickett, one of the best, one of the highest rated corners we've ever seen. I mean, just studs everywhere, especially bringing in Ty Benefield at free safety and bringing back Tamarcus Cooley as well. Looking at the schedule, though, the thing that we all want to look at, the schedule. Weeks 1 and 2, I think that they'll be heavily favored, and then weeks 5 through 8, I think they'll also be heavily favored. You can't give me an argument that they're going to lose any of those games. You really can't. LSU is too talented, and they have too much returning for them to lose those games, and the Week 13 game as well. The Week 3 game against Ole Miss at Oxford is going to be game of the year. Like I said in the previous segment, if you didn't hear the previous segment, that's going to be game of the year. I've already sharpied it in. Then you play Texas A&M at home, and Texas A&M torched you at home last year. Will it be a repeat process? We'll see. And then coming off the bye, they play Alabama and Texas, and then at Tennessee. Games that I could see them losing, but really this schedule offers them some really, it offers them leeway. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I only see 1 or 2 losses on this schedule. The number 2 team in the SEC, in my opinion, is the Georgia Bulldogs, which means that Texas number 1 will get to them in a second, plus everything else. So if you made it this far, just keep going. We're almost there. We're almost there. I understand it's a very long video, but I put a lot of effort into this. Looking at Georgia, the storylines is twice in a row they have failed in the college football playoff. When you're at Georgia, the expectation is to win the national title. Winning the SEC, great. Going to the college football playoff, great. Winning the national title, they have set the standard as the top dog, pun intended, and they have gone to the college football playoff twice, and they have been humbled by their own conference and by an independent who everyone hates. Objectively, everyone in the SEC hates Notre Dame. A lot of people elsewhere also hate Notre Dame, but everyone for different reasons. Some people just despise them. So you lose to teams that have high pedigree like that, but not as high as yours, because you're the top dog. And now everyone's starting to question you. Oh, is Georgia, are they really national title contenders? Are they really a team that is just going to bulldoze their way to the college football playoff and through the college football playoff again? Because some people are not giving them the benefit of the doubt anymore. So that's just a storyline. I'm not going to comment on that, but that's just the storyline that I hear. And then they bring back their stars: Nate Frazier, Gunnar Stockton, a lot of the defense, Elias Robinson, again, a guy like Xavier Brown from Alabama, just a shutdown corner, top 10 NFL draft pick. And number three, we're rolling it on back, the title expectations. They have title expectations, and that should not change. They should be expecting to win a title this year. They have a lot of guys returning. There is no reason why they should not go win a title this year. Key returning players: Gunnar Stockton, Nate Frazier, and KJ Bolden. And I didn't even say Elias Robinson, right? So they have a lot of high quality returning players. Key incoming players: Khalil Barnes at safety. I think that he's a stud. Isaiah Canyon, they needed a guy at wide receiver after they lost Zachariah Branch. And then Zyke Helton at right guard. He was a 3-star in the he's a 3-star true freshman, and he's looking like he's gonna start. What early fall camp reports say, from what I gather. So that'll be very interesting. And then key games as well for them. And we'll look at that in just 1 minute. Looking at the roster grades: quarterback, it's an A. Gunnar Stockton is an A quarterback. Running back room is an A with Nate Frazier, one of the best running backs in the conference. Now, the receiver room, it's definitely a troublesome spot for me here. Look, they brought in Zachariah Branch, who was an awesome transfer addition, and he got so many receptions last year, and he was the bulk of the receptions last year. No one really caught the ball except for him. So who's going to replace him? Isaiah Canyon certainly could. London Humphreys certainly could. But don't see. There's a lack of top end talent there that really Georgia should have, in my opinion. Although they do bring back Lawson Lucky, which really inflates the room to a B. I think the wide receiver room by itself is probably a C plus. But Lawson Lucky is one of the best tight ends in the country, top 3 for sure. At offensive line, I think it's an A minus. They bring back a lot of guys. They bring back their longtime center Drew Bobo. We'll see how this experiment at right guard goes with Zyke Helton. He's a very fringe player. If he plays really good, this offensive line's an A plus. If he doesn't, this offensive line could go down to a B in terms of their play. And then just looking at the defense in general, I could read out the grids, but you see them: D line A, linebacker A minus, corner and safety A pluses. Key returning players everywhere. And Elijah Griffin is one of the top end prospects that we've seen over the past couple years at defensive line. They bring back Gabe Harris, Xavier McLeod. They bring back at linebacker Raylan Wilson, Quintavious Johnson as well. They bring in Khalil Barnes to play that star position. They bring back Elias Robinson. They bring back KJ Bolden. All these guys are NFL draft picks, like high end NFL draft picks, for most of them at least. And then the coaching obviously is an A plus. Kirby Smart is one of the best coaches in college football, unless proven otherwise. Looking at the schedule, they only have 2 games where I could see them realistically losing. They obviously could lose to Georgia Tech. I'm not saying that they couldn't. I'm not saying that they couldn't get upset out Alabama. I'm just saying I think that they will be heavily favored in that game, in my opinion. The only games I could see them realistically losing is at Ole Miss, because they lost there last year, and then Oklahoma, because I think Oklahoma's a really good matchup. It's a really good matchup for Oklahoma going up against Georgia, in my opinion. But other than that, this team should steamroll through the SEC, in my opinion. And now we finally make our way to Texas at number 1. And the storylines: Sark, CFP. What I mean by that is Steven Sarkisian has made his way to CFP. He's been comfortably in the CFP now. He has established Texas as just a championship team that goes through on championship runs. And going to point number 3, can they make a championship run that ends with them winning the big thing? This is Texas's year to win, because they have everyone returning, and the guys that they brought in are superstars. Cam Coleman. And then you look at the key returning players: Arch Manning, Colin Simmons, and Jelani McDonald. Jelani McDonald, very not a household name yet, but he really should be with the way he plays. He plays really well, and he is one of the best safeties in the country. And a lot of people may disagree with me on that. I don't care, because Jelani McDonald is one of those guys that is just a special player making special plays, in my opinion. Key incoming players: Cam Coleman, star; Rayleigh Brown, star; Bo Masco, shutdown corner. And then those key games. Man, that Ohio State game. That Ohio State game is crucial for them to win. That game is at home. Ohio State is worse this year. Not by much, only marginally, but your team is 100% better. Texas is 100% better this year. And looking at the roster grades, you'll see why. Quarterback, A with Arch Manning. Running back, A. They reloaded and it looks a lot better. Receiving room, it's the best receiving room in the entire country. Bringing back Ryan Wingo, bringing back Emmett Mosley the fifth, and then bringing in Cam Coleman as your number one, and then obviously Michael Massousis as well at tight end, very good tight end as well. Offensive line looks good. D line is just wreaking havoc everywhere with bringing back 3 out of the 4 guys there. Linebacker room is an A minus, but they do bring in Rasheem Biles, who's a star, and you look at the cornerback room. It's a B plus in my opinion, with Bo Masco coming in. Safety, Jelani McDonald. I already sang his praises before. They do not bring back their kicker or their punter from last year, which is why that grade is a B. And then coaching is a B plus because we have not seen them go win the big one. It's an elite coaching staff. I do have my doubts about Will Muschamp, but Steve Sarkisian and Cal Flood are really good at what they do. Now, looking at the schedule, I think they'll be favored in a lot of games this year. It is a grueling schedule. It is a extremely tough schedule. I think they'll get through it though. Like I could see Georgia having more wins, but Texas being the objectively better team in my opinion. So they have to. That Ohio State game is a must win in week 2. They get that game at home, like I said before. Then coming off of that bye, you play Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout, and then you play Ole Miss at home, and then you play at LSU and at Texas A&M. Just very games that they really objectively they could lose those games. They really could. Now, that is it on this side. Before we get out of here, I want you guys to take a look at my first and second team all SEC teams. I'm going to go quickly through them. So if you just want to pause and the video, you can look at them in full. But here's my first team for you guys. Again, I've got Caden Green up there from Mizzou. I have Trinidad Chambliss as my number 1 quarterback. And then you can see that secondary is just loaded with Bama and Georgia players as well. And then you look now at the second team, all SEC team. Again, pause the video if you want to really look at them in depth. I have Arch Manning, my second team, all SEC. Maybe a bit of a surprise that he's not number 1, but he's there. I think I represented every team except for Florida, and that's because I had to choose between Nate Frazier and Jaden Ball. And I think that Nate Frazier is only marginally better, but I mean, Jaden Ball's right there as well. Really, it should have been Nate Frazier dash Jaden Ball, in my opinion. But I only had to choose one, and I chose Nate Frazier. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Again, a very, very long video. I get it. I don't usually make videos this long, I promise. But if you subscribe to the channel, that would really appreciate. That would really go toward a good cause here. Just trying to build this channel up to 1,000 subscribers. I know there's going to be a lot of criticisms with this video. I'm here for it. Put it in the comments down below. I love to interact with you guys down below with any comment whatsoever. And until next time, I will see you in the next one.